Welcome to the Development Friday. My name is Michael Olschimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. We have the session here every Friday to allow you, the audience, to ask questions about Data Vault and essentially, any Data Vault question, data-driven topics, cloud computing, data mining would work. Everything I can answer essentially. You can use essentially the chat here in the client. You can use the Q&A function in the client if you want to raise questions. You can raise your hand if you want. So I'll give you a voice. Don't misuse that. Or I give you a form after today's session where you can also type in your questions, and that allows me a bit to prepare some slides, which I did for today essentially. If you receive multiple questions, I would be cherry picking, selecting them per my desires, whatever. And it's typically time box 10 minutes, so try to find questions that I can answer within 10 minutes essentially, or 15 minutes roughly. Okay, and if there would be no question at all, I will talk about the cluster. Haven't done that lately, so I didn't have much time. But okay, so let's go straight to the question here. And this one is about naming conventions. So what naming conventions do you recommend for Data Vault 2.0 or for Data Vault model in general? And you know the naming convention that we use in the book, typically it's something like with a prefix like this one here, hub_customer or h_customer, l_ something, s_customer data, and so on. The problem with this is, with this approach, well, what's the advantage? The advantage is it's easy to read and easy to understand, especially for someone who's new to Data Vault. They can quickly understand what this name means essentially. So it's nice and good to read essentially. So I would still use it for books, and we still use it for articles and presentations and so on. So it's a good starting point. But first of all, so it's about, for example, about links. How do you name links? You could call a retail transaction just retail transaction, right? Or you could call it by the referencing hubs, like a customer walks into a store, buys a product or something. That's a retail transaction. So which one to prefer? I don't really mind for links. I prefer the business-driven name, retail transaction. If you can name it, name it. If you can't, because there might be just a relationship between two hubs or three hubs, and it doesn't have really a name, go for the hub reference. But I prefer the more business-driven name essentially. So if it's a retail transaction, don't call it customer, product, store, something. Just call it retail transaction, right? So make it readable essentially. But I don't like the prefixes here because they have one disadvantage. Or well, the advantage is, let's phrase it like this: it groups all your hubs together. So it's nice to have all the hubs together, or all the links together, all the satellites together. But what's the value of that, right? So what we typically do is we use suffixes. So we call the customer hub or the hub customer, we call it customer H. And then what we do is for every satellite which is attached to the same, a satellite is attached to a parent, hub or link, and we use the name of the parent as the first part of the satellite's name. And then the second part is the content of the satellite. So now all of a sudden, when you follow these suffixes here or these postfixes and use the first part of the satellite's name to be the parent's name, then all of a sudden your entities that belong together are grouped together. Right? So we have the customer hub in the center, and then around the customer hub, you have swirling around the satellites essentially. For example, the customer data satellite, the customer preferred address satellite, and even some links like this customer product store link from the previous slide. That's also essentially somehow attached. Yeah, but it's not attached to the product, right? So, well, at least not naming wise. So, but yeah, the satellites specifically, they are attached to the hubs now. That's what I prefer. So that's the basic idea. And then, so we follow this pattern. Always have to use the parent name, the content name, and then some suffix essentially. But then the next problem is upper lowercase doesn't work because in many SQL engines, when you have a case-sensitive name like this one here, you have to quote all the names. And from a user perspective, that's not nice. So what we typically do is we use lowercase names only because you can use them uncoded, at least in many engines. So it depends a bit on the SQL engine you're on. That might drive your decision to some extent. Then we use suffixes. We use the name of the hub customer as the first part of the satellite's name. Then comes the content. And then we have splitting reasons. We have satellite splitting reasons. And you might have customer data from two different systems, SAP and Salesforce, for example. So you have two satellites, but how do you distinguish them? How do you know that you have two satellites? Because you split by source system. So what we do is we add the splitting reasons to the satellite's name. The first one is what we always teach in class. The first splitting reason is by source system. So we have essentially an abbreviation for the source system here. Typically 3-4 characters. So we limit this actually to keep it short, but we make it a bit more than just 1 or 2 characters, many source systems that you have, and you want to make it a bit readable essentially. So 3-4 characters for the source system identifier, SAP, for example, or ERP, SFDC, whatever you can come up with. And then we provide a map of characters. And this map is essentially focused on the splitting reasons for satellites. The first character is the rate of change, low, medium, high, LMH. So we have essentially 1 character for this to indicate the rate of change, if you need that on your platform or if you want to use this. Then the next character is security reason, the security class, right? Maybe I just made some up here. Restricted is R. Then we have C for classified, and then 0 for public data. I want to avoid using P for public because P I'm reserving for personal data. P and N, personal and non-personal data, it's a privacy class. And that is another reason to split the satellite. And I want to avoid using characters for one class and the other. So I don't want to use P for both security and privacy classes, because then if you avoid that, you can easily use regular expressions to identify something or search for, filter for specific satellites and so on. That's what I like. All right, so and then, so MRP, again, rate of change, security class, privacy class, and then comes the suffix. We have 1 more character here down here for business vault satellites. So BS is not. I don't want to phrase this like bull, whatever. I don't want to spell it out. No, this one is a satellite in the business vault. So whenever there's the entities in the business vault, at least internally at Scalefree, we use a B to indicate this. What we do with clients is typically we have a schema for the business vault. So this indicator here is questionable, right? If you have a schema name already somehow business vault related, then you don't need to have this B in the satellite's name anymore. But for business vault satellites, when you have changes on the business logic, how do we distinguish those? Because in some environments, we're not allowed to remove old business logic. We have to keep it for auditing reasons and other reasons, convenience reasons. So the idea is essentially to use a version flag. And typically we omit version 1 because most of your entities are version 1, right? So we just omit version 1. We don't print it. What we print is version 0. Version 0 is the satellite table without a log end date. And then on top of that, we create a version 1 satellite where we omit the 1 again, where we calculate the log end date using the lead or lag function in the view directly. So that's that. Maybe I've seen this before already. So 1, we omit the version 0 we print actually, and everything after 1. So for example, this satellite here in the business vault is version 5 of a business logic. It has been modified multiple times, and that's essentially indicated here essentially. So that explains why you have 5 different satellites, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's the version essentially. And then we also have special entity types like non-hysterized satellites or non-hysterized links, multi-active satellites, and so on. And we also indicate this by another character in the suffix. So based on this one, NS, I know this is essentially a non-hysterized satellite. And that's what we essentially documented here. The table is more or less from the book, I believe. There should be no changes to the book, maybe some labels here or something. But those are the suffixes we use for the special entity types. And that way I can also essentially identify, again, using some regular expressions, which satellites are there, can run test cases on those and so on. That's the idea. All right. Again, business vault, I would typically create my own schema or multiple schemas actually for business vault entities. So it's questionable today if I would essentially use a B in the satellite's name, but it depends if you have everything in one schema or not, right? So that's the decision. And don't forget, it's not about the data vault model. It's also about the information mask. So we also have for dimensions and facts, we have a suffix. And then also for like in real-time systems, or when you use real-time systems with the enterprise data warehouse, we also have like event tables that trigger something where new records appear, then something should happen. And the lookup tables are used by real-time by the business process automation software to look up data from the data warehouse or create mappings and so on. All right, so that's what you want to check out. That's what we prefer. That's what most of our customers prefer. In most client projects, we have something like this, some suffixes with some simple mappings focusing on the satellite splits typically in the source system. And again, parent and the content. That's the basic idea for the satellites names. We also have for hubs and links. Hubs and links might also have a data source. For example, like this individual data source. For example, if you have a hub specifically for SAP, because there could be the case that you have an overlap that you don't want to or can't otherwise solve, or a specific structure that's unique to SAP, you could come up with a product hub just for SAP. I would try to avoid that, to be clear, but in some cases, there's no other way around that. So you need to indicate that this hub has something to do with SAP. So you could do also the source indicator or the source name abbreviation. You could also put on hubs. You have this a bit more often on links. Again, I would try to avoid that, but so be it. That's actually more often that the relationship is specifically for a specific source system. And security and privacy classes, you also want to indicate sometimes on business keys and relationships. Again, I would try to, I would try to avoid that to some extent, because you need to integrate data across different source systems, and having a highly secured business key might make sense, but it's not a good, it limits yourself, let's say that. So that's what it is. But it might be the case, and that's why I added those here. I would try to keep them optional. So if you can, but might be required essentially. All right. Yeah, that's it more or less. So that's the naming convention we use internally, or similar naming conventions what we use internally and with clients. You want to document them, right, in your project, but that's the basic idea. All right, cool. So if you have a question like this, use this form at sfr.ee/evfriday. That's where you can type in your question. A short one like this, great question. I never added so many slides, I believe. And yeah, shoot your question. You can upload some pictures, some drawings if you want. Keep them small so they fit on an HD screen, right? And check out our other webinars at scalefree.to/webinars, where you can also check out a webinar for Wescape and for DBT at the moment. And they might be coming more over the time, essentially. They're on a monthly basis. And then also check out the Data Vault Innovators community, DVIC, that we set up with Ignition Data, essentially where you can, it's a forum style community platform where you can ask more questions, where there are people from Scalefree and Ignition Data to answer your questions essentially, and where we also pull questions from the system and answer them on a live stream once a month roughly. So yeah, cool. Enjoy your weekend, guys. Thanks for the question, and hope to see you next Friday, same time, same spot. Yeah, see you guys next week. Thank you.